audience would like to know that every time you do interviews and you're so passionately involved and you're asking all these questions, they're all genuine questions. It's genuinely being done. It's not just to corner your subject.
No, absolutely not. As I said before, anybody can bash somebody. It's your studio, it's your ground, you set the ground rules. As well as being accurate in what you do as a journalist, you've got to be fair as well. Fairness and accuracy. And sometimes they're not exactly the same thing. And so you've got to be conscious that you shouldn't put people under unnecessary pressure. You shouldn't bully people. I was accused once by a Palestinian politician of mistaking bad manners for good journalism. And I apologized. I make no bones about it. I apologize. Sometimes you go over the top. Look, we're not robots. We're human beings. Sometimes we do the job reasonably well. Other times we don't do it so well. You don't perform the same way each day, but what you do try and do, and what is important, especially for a program like Hard Talk, is that you try your best to treat everybody exactly the same way. And I would hope that in the course of the 7.5 years I did Hard Talk and the 4.5 years we've been doing the Doha debates, that nobody could tell where my own political leanings lie. Having interviewed everybody, I'm not sure even I could tell where my own political leanings lie, but I hope they've never been apparent in an interview, and they shouldn't be. There's no place for that. There are holes in everybody's arguments, and my job is to show what those holes are, irrespective of what my own political beliefs might be.
Okay. A lot of the people that I've come across have asked me that when the solution to the Middle East crisis lies not in the Middle East but in the West, then why are we talking about Doha debates?
Well, we're talking about having Doha debates because it's important that the people who make the decisions in the West listen to the voices that are coming out of the Muslim and Arab world. Without knowing what those voices are saying, without knowing what the concerns are to these people, and there are very, very different concerns. Again, I go back to the point I made. We, in the West, often lump everybody in the 22 Arab states together and say this is what the Arab world thinks. There's no way of saying what the Arab world thinks anymore. There's a way of saying what the Western world thinks. I mean, they think all kinds of different things. But we need to know what that diversity is. We need to know who are the moderates, who are the extremists. Who's up, who's down, who's going somewhere, who's got new ideas, who's got new thinking to offer. And it's only by listening to the voices. It's amazing how many experts there are on the Middle East and the West from people who've never been there. It's like amazing how many experts there are on Al Jazeera, Arabic, and people who don't speak a word of Arabic and have never understood a thing that the channel was saying. There are a lot of potted experts around, and we try to provide some meat, some substance, some concrete views coming out of some very interesting people emerging in the Arab world. These are the young people who are very well informed, very savvy, very sophisticated. Instead of following like their parents, they want to lead. They have good ideas, interesting ideas, and they've embraced the concept of debate in a way that their parents never had either the opportunity or the willingness to do.
And in your audience you have, I mean, a lot of the people don't know that there are also Christians and Jews who are Arabs.
Absolutely.
So your audience is a mixture of all kinds of faith traditions.
Oh, all kinds. We draw our audience mainly in Doha anyway from the student body, and the student body comes from many different countries. Many different countries. But we try and get as much of a cross-section as possible. And our audiences are becoming more and more mature. I mean, let's face it, what we're talking about issues of human rights, civil liberties, torture,
women's rights,
politics. Yeah, absolutely. All kinds of things like that. And they're doing this for the first time in their lives, on foreign television, in a foreign language. And that's quite an achievement. And they're doing it in a very sophisticated and civilized way. This is not, we don't have catcalling and booing in our debates. We had a bit of catcalling here in Washington, actually, strangely enough. We don't get that in the Gulf. But we have very civilized debates where people agree to disagree and walk away in a civilized fashion. And in a rough neighborhood like the Middle East, that's something. That really is something.
After doing so many debates and having a diversified audience in your pool, What do you think of the Muslims? And especially when you see a woman in hijab or a headscarf and you can't see her face, but maybe there's an entrepreneur behind that veil. Maybe there's a doctor or a teacher. What do you think?
You can't ask me what I think about Muslims. It's like saying, you know, what do I think about Brits? The question.
Well, you can ask me about that.
The question is, the question is to why. I think so many different things. Look, people are human beings. There's infinite variety in them. It doesn't matter whether they're Muslims or Christians or Jews or whatever. I don't lump people together in categories.
But when you talk about the Muslim perspective, which you just mentioned at the top of the recording,
perspectives. This is the important thing.
That every time we see
the variety of views, the range of views.
Yeah,
that we get from the Muslim and Arab world.
I never hear criticism on the nuns the way I see or hear about Muslim women in Wales, for example.
Yeah, and your point is?
Why is there this misconception or perception about the Muslims?
Misperception. Well, because unfortunately people are ignorant in many ways and don't bother to find out. They just accept stereotypes and they don't bother to find out what the real situation is. Look, what we're trying to do is explain the variety of opinions, the diversity of views within the Muslim and Arab world. A diversity, every bit as diverse as the Western world or any other part of this planet. You want me to lump people together and ask me a question about what I think about Muslims? I can't answer that. I can't answer. What do I think about you know, people from Russia? What do I think about Americans? It's too broad a question. I don't put people into boxes. I try to deal with individuals. I've interviewed individuals. We have individuals on our debates. I believe in the importance of the individual. I believe, you know, in variety and diversity. That's the kind of world we live in. I don't lump people together in categories.
And after doing so many debates with Muslims, do you think that majority of them are radicals or suicide bombers or just wanting to kill the rest?
Of course I don't. Because I see them debating in our debates, and I see a whole range of views, just as I would if I got a collection of people in London together. Whole range of views, from the very sophisticated, very informed, to the pretty radical, but that's what society's made up of. So you know, this is what we're trying to do, is get away from the stereotypes. Show people what the real views are. Show people what the trends are, what the things are that are, you know, are exciting the Muslim world, stimulating the Muslim world, are giving it its richness and its culture.